So enterprise Java Beans is another enterprise technology related to Java. Remember we finished JSP and servlet. So that is again server side. Yes, server side, but it is web tier concept. So remember in 3-tier architecture, so we have the web tier, then the business tier, where the business logic is there. So then of course the database. So that is how the 3-tier. So this is server-side scripting like JSP servlet. And of course the clients are also there, right? So that is your web clients and any other application client, okay? Then of course the server side, you have the JSP servlet. So in business tier, the technology supported by enterprise Java or Java Enterprise Edition is EJBs, Enterprise Java Beans. So Enterprise Java Beans are software components. Remember, we prefer component-oriented architecture, where we can modularize reusable, maintainable software components, communicating and collaborating together to build our applications, enterprise-wise application. So therefore, Enterprise Java Bean or EJB is a server-side software component. It's more business-oriented component. It is usually sit behind the JSP servlet. It's basically between the JSP servlet and database. So sometimes we call it business tier. This is where most the business logic is there, because JSP and servlet is more presentation oriented. Of course, we learn how to connect to database from servlet, but that is not the best practice. So servlets and JSP, those are not supposed to communicate with the database. So those are supposed to communicate with other components like EJBs, and EJBs need to communicate with database. Not every EJB, right? Some EJBs can communicate with database. So then we have better separation of concerns. Okay, right. So that is the idea behind EJB. So Enterprise Java Bean is a server-side software component, right? Server-side that process or control business logic. Process or control business logic. Okay. And again, EJB is a specification from Java Enterprise Edition. So it's a Java Enterprise Edition application server vendors to support it. So just like JSP servlet, the web containers must support it. Similarly, application containers, those who are providing application containers like Wildfly, JBoss, so they support Enterprise Java Bean runtime. So basically, they provide the runtime container for the Enterprise Java Bean so that we can deploy EJBs in the application server and use it. So one of the reasons why we used Wildfly rather than Tomcat is because Wildfly support or it has both web container and application container. So therefore, we can use the same Wildfly environment that we use for JSP servlet. We can use it for deployment of Enterprise Java Beans as well. Okay. Right. So therefore, EJB components are deployed in Java application servers like Wildfly, JBoss, WebLogic, and so on. Okay. And also these web servers or enterprise application containers does a lot of support like security, transaction handling, right? And so on. So therefore, we have, as software developers, we can just concentrate on the business logic. Okay, we can concentrate on the business logic because other supports are provided by the container. Okay, so that is the idea. So you need a Java Enterprise Edition server, which usually contain web container and EJB container. So web container supports servlet and JSP. Enterprise or the application container, or sometimes we call it EJB container, support enterprise beans. And of course, the database is behind the application server, like MySQL or Oracle. So at any time, if you have any doubts, you can ask. Okay, so then and there clarify. Okay. Right. So as I told you, these EJB containers, or basically application servers, provide a lot of support. Otherwise, we have to worry about those things as software developers. But we don't have to worry about those things because those things we just need to configure. Whereas we can concentrate on business logic when we develop enterprise Java Bean components. So what are the features supported by EJB containers? So application containers, the life cycle management like initialization, when the component is destroyed or take out from the memory, right? So those kind of things. Security, concurrency, that is transaction handling. Okay, concurrency and transaction management, we take it together. Object pooling for performance. So it can create pool of objects and those are ready to serve requests. Because remember, these are enterprise applications like banking applications where thousands, sometimes 100,000s of concurrent users are using your application. So object pooling is super important for performance. And also deploy time configurations. We can do some configurations at deploy time rather than doing it at the code level using XML and other configurations. And also the network management and so on. So remember, we are interested in distributed software development because that is scalable, performance-wise good. So those are also managed by synchronization and so on, handled by EJB container or your application container. Right. So when to use EJB? So and obviously when to use EJB when we develop application, enterprise level applications, and we want to separate or we want to go for the component-based architecture, which is more maintainable, reusable. Okay. And also we need remote access, distributed applications. And maybe we have different type of clients, web clients, maybe normal app, Windows clients, because a Windows client can directly call a EJB. Of course, web clients will call it through the JSP servlet. Okay. And of course, scalable because EJB can be deployed in distributed servers and so on. Right. So advantages, of course, if those are reusable, maintainable, we need less effort because a lot of support, built-in support is there. And of course, it can be called by different type of clients. Okay. So disadvantage, actually we can't say disadvantages, but a little bit of challenges are, of course, we need a server now, right? You need a server. Of course, servers are not always commercial. For example, we have plenty of free and open source servers as well. And of course, you need software engineers who can handle complexity, who can handle the server-side deployments and so on, who has courage, uh, passion, and seriousness to do these kind of serious application development. Because things are not that simple when it comes to working with enterprise Java beans and so on. So that is why you have that subject anyway. Right. So there are three types of enterprise Java beans in Java Enterprise Edition. So Enterprise Edition has specified three types of EJBs. So what are those? Session beans, message driven beans or MDB, entity beans. So out of these three, entity beans are now deprecated for JPA, Java Persistence API. So which is your next topic anyway, another topic you have. So therefore, we don't talk much about entity beans because it's sort of outdated concept. But just remember, the three type of enterprise Java beans are session beans, message-driven beans, and entity beans. But in your syllabus, we are more interested in session beans. We are not at all interested in entity beans. We just look at some theoretical aspect about message-driven beans. Okay. Right. So remember we discussed about Java remote method invocation. That was our first topic. Right. How to call method in one JVM from another JVM. So that is remote call method from another machine. So EJBs also do pretty much something like that, but EJB support remote method invocation plus so many other like transaction handling, security, scalability, performance, and so on. So therefore, when to use Java RMI, when to use EJB. So that is something you must know, right? Because you have learned Java RMI and now you learn EJB. So the simple answer is, if you are into a very highly scalable enterprise level, big applications where you need all the support, go for EJB. But if it is not a very enterprise level load, there are just those are used by few users, like internal applications and so on. Maybe for simplicity, you can go for Java RMI. Okay, Java RMI. But basically, EJB encapsulate the Java RMI features as well. Okay. So middleware services such as security, transaction management, object pooling, etc. need to be done by the Java programmer if you go for RMI. So which is not very practical thing. So if you need all those things, better go for EJB. The middleware services are provided by EJB container automatically. If it is just you need to do method invocation, remote method invocation, go for RMI. But if you need all the other features and remote method invocation, go for EJB. Simple as that. And also RMI is not components. Right? And also it is not required to be deployed on the server. But if you go for EJB, you need a server. For RMI, just you need JVM. But if you go for EJB, you need support of a server. So that is a little bit of a disadvantage for EJB. But of course, you need that server to get those support. Okay. So that is a little bit of positive point for the RMI because you don't need a separate server. But of course, you get only the method, remote method invocation on no other additional services. And remember, RMI is built on top of the socket programming. It's part of the JDK. But EJB is part of the Java Enterprise Edition. Okay. It's more advanced concept. Right. Still, we haven't done web services. Web services is another topic you have. Right. Your next few topics are web services, socket, web socket programming, and JPA. Right. So remember, EJB is a server-side component. Web service is also a way of developing server-side components. Okay. But there's a big difference. EJB is supposed to be used by Java clients or JSP servlet to any other Java client. There is a big disadvantage of EJB as well. But of course, if your application is such, that is not a big disadvantage. That is natural. But if you want your application, your components to be called by other technologies like .NET application, Python, so then web services or expose or develop your component as a web service is better. Okay, because it's technology neutral. But the good news is you can easily convert EJB into a web service with very little effort. So therefore, it's not a big issue. If you want, you can just develop a EJB so that your Java applications call it normally. And also you can expose it as a web service so that other applications can call it. So therefore, it's not a big issue. So usually what we prefer is develop EJB. And if others need to call you, like other type of technology clients, we expose it as a web service as well. Okay. So EJB components can be easily exposed as a web service. So that is very important. So if you want, you can develop a web service without EJB. So that is one approach. Second approach is you first develop the EJB and expose it as a web service. Right. So when it comes to EJB, so there are different versions like EJB version 1, EJB. Remember, this is Java Enterprise Edition. This is nothing to do with your JDK. Right. EJB 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what your syllabus referencing is EJB 3. at EJB3. But now we have the EJB4 as well, but we don't refer to EJB4, which is called Jakarta Enterprise Bean 4, which is what the Oracle has done is they have made it even more open source. Because EJBs are fairly open, but it's not 100% open. So therefore, some people still reluctant to use these Java Enterprise Edition technologies. So therefore, they wanted to make it even more open by making it Jakarta project so that people will have more freedom. But anyway, your syllabus is referring to EJB3 because EJB4 components can't be executed in EJB3 servers. EJB3 components cannot be executed in EJB4 servers without changes. Okay, so therefore we will concentrate on EJB3, and that is one of the reasons why we are using little bit older Eclipse and little bit older Wildfly server, because we need to develop EJB3. Okay, but from EJB3 to 4 there were only small changes, but though those are small changes, so the way we develop is slightly different. Okay, right. So remember, we have different type of enterprise beans. What are those? Session beans, entity beans, and message driven beans. Okay, session beans, message driven beans, and entity beans. So first we will look at session beans. Actually, we are not looking at enterprise bean because it's a deprecated. Message driven beans also, we are not very serious. We just look at the theory only. Okay, but session beans, we do it as a practical as well. Right, what is mean by session bean? So there are two types of session beans called state. Actually, there are three types of session beans called stateless session bean, stateful session bean, and there's another type of a sort of a session bean called singleton session beans. Right. So forget about the variations. So what is mean by session bean? So session bean encapsulate business logic. It's a business component, server-side component that encapsulate business logic. Actually, when we say EJB, the general EJB is session bean. So your session beans may be related to payment process. Maybe your session bean is related to student registration. Your session bean is related to maybe bank transactions, or maybe different session beans concentrate on different transactions. Right? So it encapsulates a business logic or business process, like a controlling thing. Right? And session bean can be called locally by other components in the same server or remotely from some other clients. Call your session bean, or maybe client, or maybe some other JVM, some other server, or other components or JSP servlet from the same server, or other component in the same server. So then it is local call. But if it is from another machine or another server or another client, it is a remote call. Okay. And even a web service client can call your session bean. Of course, if you have exposed your session bean as a web service. Right. So when it comes to session bean, there are three aspects. We call it business interface, enterprise bean class, and of course helper classes. But the mainly two, that is business interface and your actual bean class, your implementation. So this is the one that we deploy. This is the one that is used by your client to identify your component or your session bean. And some helper classes called by your enterprise bean. So that is normal, right? Right. So therefore, we have two classes, one class and one interface. That is business interface and the enterprise bean class. Of course, helper classes can be anything that you want. So therefore, we have a naming convention. This is not a rule, just a convention. So when you give a interface, you just give it a name, like something like order. Okay, order, or maybe payment, or order processing, or maybe account, or loan processing. So that is something we go for the given for the interface. But when we create the bean class, we add bean to them. Order become order interface. Relevant bean is order bean. Account interface, account bean. Payment interface, then payment bean. Okay. And of course, the name, you can give it a name also, like servlets, we can give name. Right? So usually we use the same name. If the class is account bean, the bean is given the name also as the account bean. But again, these are just conventions. Okay. So anyone can violate it, but usually software developers strict with these convention, because software development is a teamwork. Teamwork, and it's a global work, right? So there's nothing called Sri Lankan conventions, Singaporean convention. So we have sort of global conventions among software developers. Okay. Right. So then packaging. So remember our servlet and JSP, we can package into a WAR file. Having web.inf folder where web XML file and your classes are there, your JSP and HTML files are there in the web content root. So similarly, enterprise Java beans are packaged into a Java file. Right? .jar file, just like normal Java file. Normal Java applications also we can package into a Java file. So EJBs are packaged into Java file. And that EJB can be part of the enterprise application archive file, or EAR. So that means your big application is a EAR file, and it has some enterprise Java beans, that means some Java files, and maybe it has a web application, WAR file. So WAR file and set of Java files can be packaged together into an EAR file. So that is your big application. So therefore your EJBs are packaged into Java files, which can be deployed separately, or which can be packaged into an EAR file, and that EAR file can be deployed. Okay. And when we use something like Eclipse, so all those things are done by your IDE. But when you do your real world software development, of course, there also we use IDEs like Eclipse and IntelliJ, but you need to have manual build process, because it's a team environment. So that is why sometimes we have dedicated engineer, we call that the build engineer, or the system engineer, to help the software engineers, because the system engineer or that build engineer's task is maintaining the build, deployments, and so on. Sometimes one of the software engineer play that role, or in a very big projects, we have a dedicated system engineer, or sometimes even set of system engineers, especially when it comes to production applications. Okay. So they maintain these build, they write this Maven script, and script, which build those WAR files, Java files, EAR files, and even deploy it to the server. Automate all those things, right? So that is not part of your syllabus. That is something you will learn when you go to the industry. Right? So usually you don't have to do it. So those things are already done, but you just need to know how to use it. Okay. Right. So that is how it is deployed. Your enterprise Java beans are Java files. So those Java files can be independently deployed, or you can package it into an enterprise archive file or EAR file, which may include some WAR files as well, or maybe one WAR file and maybe few EJB Java files. Okay. Right. So then how do you access session bean? If it is local, yes, just you can call it directly. But even when it is local or remote, we usually use the same approach. That is, either you can use JNDI lookup. So that is one approach. That is the approach we use here. JNDI lookup. We use that in remote method invocation as well. RMI. Or we can use dependency injection. Right. So that is using annotations and so on. We can let one component communicate with the other component, or let one component discover another component. But we will be using the JNDI approach. So don't worry, we'll do a small practical, okay, at the end. Hopefully my machine is working, okay. Right, so don't worry, I will explain how these things are done when we are doing that practical example, okay. Right, so there are two types of clients, as I already mentioned, the local client and remote client. So local client means either another Java bean in EJB in the same server, or maybe a JSP servlet in the same server calling your EJB. So then it's a local client. So remote client means either it's a remote client like a normal Windows application, or maybe another EJB or another component in a different server calling your EJB remotely. So then those clients need to use the remote client approach. Okay. But the good news is you don't feel much of a difference when you call it locally or remotely, because the approach is pretty much the same. So therefore, as software developers, enterprise application developers, whether we call a EJB locally or remotely, it doesn't matter much. We pretty much do it in the same way. So that is a good thing, because we don't feel that complexity of remote calling that is hidden from us. So those are handled by your servers. So that is why we prefer to use these technologies rather than we write all those things. We worry about those things, locating a remote application components, calling it, maybe network related things, security related things. Then we need to handle those things at the application level. But the good news is those are handled by your server. Okay, we just need to configure. Right, I already explained what is the difference between local client and a remote client. Okay. Right, so as I told you, there are three types of session beans. There are three types of session beans. What are those? Stateless session bean, stateful session bean, and singleton session bean. Right. Stateless session bean means between method calls, say same client calling methods in your session bean. Right. Same client, but your session bean doesn't maintain a conversational state between you and your client. So basically your session beans response and forget about the client. Right? Forget about the client. So it's, when the same client call you again for the session bean, it is just another call. It doesn't maintain a conversational session. Okay, so that is what is my stateless. So that work for most of the cases. Like maybe someone just searching for some information. So then maybe that guy again searching, it's a new request. So this is very highly scalable, high performance, because we don't keep track of sessions, okay? So when we have a lot of clients, so they are doing some isolated tasks, so we can serve those kind of things using stateless session bean, because you need less resources and it's less complicated. But there are situations we need to maintain the session, like shopping cart, right? When you add something to the shopping cart and go to some other searches, and again, he or she must be able to add few more items or maybe remove items and later check out. So that is a conversational state. Right. maybe when you log into a system, it's definitely a stateful session beans must handle it, like banking applications and so on. So in that kind of situations, we can't use stateless. We need to use stateful, or maybe main tasks are done by stateful and subtasks are done by stateless. So that is also possible. But we need at least one stateful session bean there. Okay. And singleton session bean is a special case of a stateless session bean. It's a special case of a stateless session bean, where only one instance serve all the request. Right? Only one instance of that session bean serve all the requests. So usually what happens is normal stateless session beans, for every request, new object is created. Then the object is destroyed. Maybe there are thousands requests happening in a particular second. So then there are 1,000 objects created. And maybe after a few seconds, those objects are destroyed and new objects are again created. Objects are created, destroyed, created, destroyed. But singleton, one object serve all the requests. It doesn't work all the scenarios, but there are rare scenarios. A singleton session being some better performance. Okay. But don't worry about those big differences. Just be aware, stateless session bean, a special type of stateless session bean called singleton, and stateful session bean. Okay. So as I told you, stateless session beans, so it just represents the business logic and it serve and forget. Does not maintain a conversational state. Okay. So this is the life cycle of a stateless session bean. Stateless session bean. So stateless session bean does not exist. A stateless session bean is session bean exist and ready. So remember, when a request comes, your EJB server or your application server create a stateless session bean object, and that object will serve the request. Okay, so that is how it happens. So therefore, there can be some things that we need to do, like initialization resources. Maybe that stateless session bean need to call another stateless session bean. So then you need to initialize that bean also. So those kind of things are done by either dependency injection or some callback methods. So then when you want to destroy that session bean also, there are certain things we may need to do, like destroy some other beans. If you take some resources, release those resources, those things are handled by your server. But there are some callback methods you need to go and code. So you just need to go and code there. So those methods are automatically called by your server. So therefore, you just need to aware of those methods, callback methods, and write the code in the relevant method. Like initialization, right? Just like the construct and destruct. Okay. But don't worry, in the exams, they don't ask about those callback methods and so on. So just very high level things only. Okay. Right. So therefore, when you develop a stateless session bean, so first you need to write your remote interface. So then you need to write your bean class. Remember, if it is remote interface is payment, your bean class is called payment bean. Okay. So then you need to write your client. So it can be a local client, remote client, or even web service client. Okay. So this is how you create your remote interface. It's just a Java interface. Okay. Where you have the method signature. So you give a name for the interface, then you have the method signatures. So those are the methods available in that particular stateless session bean. So it can be one method in signature or maybe several method signatures. Say you have a stateless session bean called calculator. Right? So then you may have add method, subtract method, multiply method. Very simple, right? Or if you take a little bit more seriously, maybe query, add, update, delete, say new user account. So you can add user account, delete user account, retrieve user details, something like that. But here interface, you have only the method signatures. Method signatures. So then you can write your bean class. You can write your bean class, which must implement your interface. Remember that interface has add method, so then you need to implement that method as well. So there you can connect with databases and calling other classes and so on, but just you need to implement it. And here to make sure that it is a stateless session beans, you must have this annotation, ampersand stateless. And this is your stateless session beans is given a name. Okay. So then your client can, so this is interface or client interface. This is your implementation. Of course, this one has not followed that body convention, like bean part is not there because I just took it from some other website. You can see I took it from JavaPoint website. So they have not followed that convention. Okay. But we will follow that convention when we do the coding. So then you need to have your remote client. Right. So there you need to use your JNDI lookup and locate your enterprise Java bean and then call that method and get the response. Okay. That is how you do it. Okay. That is how you do it. Right. So shall we do it as an example? Right. So I have given you a separate note, EJB practicals. Okay. So let me double check whether it is available in your Google Classroom. It should be available. So one for the theory, one for the practical. For the exam, of course, that theory note is enough. But so you must have that practical skills if you want to have a career, right? Let me double check whether I have uploaded the practicals. No, I think I have. Yes, so this is the note. This is the practical. Okay. And so let me open the practical note. Or shall we finish the theory part because I had some issues with my machine, right? Yeah, so let's finish the theory part and then do the practical because otherwise I might get into that same issue again. Okay. Right. So yeah, we will finish the theory part and then do the full practical. Okay. Right. So don't worry, we will do this in a practical manner. Right. So that is normal stateless session bean. So you have the interface, the bean class, stateless session bean class, implementing the interface and writing using some annotations. So these annotations will tell your application server that deploy this as a stateless session bean and provide the support for support that you give it to the stateless session beans. Okay. And of course, this can be any Java, normal Java class. Okay. So this is normal Java class, but this can be from a servlet, JSP, or any other enterprise beans. Right. So next one is, remember, special case of stateless session bean is called singleton stateless session bean. So only difference is it's a deploy, and when you deploy, one object will serve all the requests. In the memory, there will be only one, or in the application server, there will be only one instance of that stateless session bean. If you mark it as a singleton. Okay. So other concepts are not different. Only thing is you just have to mark it as a singleton. Okay, singleton. Right. So then we have stateful session beans. So remember, stateless session beans, they response when you get a request, they respond and forget about it. They don't maintain your stateless session beans with a singleton or normal. That session bean does not keep track of the clients separately or no conversational state. But if it is something like shopping cart or maybe online exam session, so it must be stateful. Right? So then one client is bound to one specific stateful session bean instance until the timeout or the user logout or user terminate the application or logout basically. Okay. So therefore, the life cycle of stateful session beans is a little bit more complicated. So remember, stateless session beans, we had only doesn't exist ready. But here you have doesn't exist ready. So there you can have the initialization and so on. And when it goes removed, of course, the destruction and so on. So then you have something called passive. So that means your stateful session bean can be passivated and again activated. So remember, these session beans can stay in the memory for long period. For example, when you log in to application, sometimes you stay there for use for sometimes for hours. Of course, usually it is just few minutes, but there can be extended sessions. So there, if you keep those things in the memory, it's a lot of resource use. So therefore, if a session bean is not active, your application server can just take it out from the memory and write it to a file. So that is called passivation. And again, when you get a request from the same session, so it can activate it and take it back to the memory. That is to better manage your compute server's memory. So there are things that you can do, right? Before active passivation, maybe you want to do something. Before activation, you want to do something. So there are callback methods for that. So you just go and write the code there. But anyway, we are not worried about those things. You're just aware of the life cycle of a stateful session B. Doesn't exist, ready, passive. So object is created, object is passivated, activated, and destructed. Of course, this can happen or may not happen. So if you are using that, if the user using that for very long period, only this passivation can happen. Maybe it can happen many more than once. But this always happens. This always happens, okay? Right, so when we develop a stateful session beans, it is pretty much like stateless, but of course, business logic wise, they have more complicated functionalities, obviously. For stateful session beans are for even maintaining a conversational state, okay? Again, first you create your remote interface, right? Remote interface. Make sure you have the remote annotation and your method signatures, just like stateless remote interface. So then you need to implement your bean class. Make sure you implement that remote interface, and the annotation must be stateful and your map name. Earlier stateless, now it must be stateful. And of course, you need to implement your methods. So there you may call databases and so on. Okay. Or call your JPA utility classes. You can have your instance variables and so on. And those instance variables values are bound to that particular session. Bound to that session. And of course, just normal way, you can call it. Using JNDI lookup, right? You can just call it. But of course, this business logic is going to be more complicated things like it has a continuation. things are continued, like adding to the shopping cart, remove values from shopping cart, checkout, okay, and so on. Right. So you must know the difference between stateless session bean versus stateful session bean. So stateless, no conversational state, maintain. Stateful conversational state is maintained between method calls for a particular client. Just like normal web session in servlet. Now you can see that there are two ways you can maintain session, either in the web session or you can maintain the session in the application content, EJB content. That is, you either maintain session in servlet JSP level, that is session is maintained in the web container, or you can maintain the session in the application content using stateful session bean. Okay. So stateful session beans take more resources, so therefore less scalable. So therefore we must use stateful session beans only when it is absolutely necessary. When state is not required, always go for stateless. Okay. And another very important point for your exam is stateless session beans can be implemented as web services, but you can't implement stateful web services as stateful session bean as a web service, because web services are not stateful. Web services just call response and forget. So there are different ways of handling sessions in web services. So therefore, you can't expose stateful session bean as a web service, because web services do not maintain sessions, conversational states in the normal way. Okay. Right. So now we move on to the third type of enterprise Java bean, because we are not interested in entity beans, because entity beans are deprecated for JPA. Message driven beans, MDBs. So message driven beans are very popular because we can use message passing to decouple our applications. So the idea is, when now in normally what happens is, when this component want to communicate with the other component, it call it locally or remotely. Call it. It's something like you call your mother. Can you make me a cup of tea? So that is direct call. Remotely you call it. So by the time you call, the other party must ready to listen. Right? In message driven beans, what happens is, it's asynchronous. So this guy just sent a message. Right? This guy just sent a message to the message queue. And this guy periodically listen from the message queue, and if there are messages, execute. So therefore, it's asynchronous. It's something like you send an email, the other guy read the email when that guy has time. So that is how MDB or the message driven beans work. So message driven bean is an enterprise bean which keep listening to messages. Right, messages. But these messages are coming to your message queue. Okay. So therefore, you are just listening to the message queue. And when you are busy, the messages will be in the queue. And maybe say there are, now you are working on message, maybe 5 messages are waiting in the queue. 5 messages are waiting in the queue. So when there are heavy load, lot of calls, there will be a lot of messages in the queue. But again, maybe those are processed. So that is how message driven beans work. For example, say, you know that when we do a transaction, so usually we are supposed to get SMS, right? So sometimes you get the SMS after 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. So most of the time, those things are handled by this kind of functionalities like message driven beans. You just send it to a message because that SMS server will be maybe very busy. So then it is keep processing the queue, and we just send it to the message queue and we continue our task. Because say you are doing that transaction using your mobile phone or laptop, you are using the web application of your bank. So they can't keep your transaction open without giving you the response until the SMS is sent. Maybe sending SMS take time. So therefore, they just send that message to that particular message queue and they give you the response saying, yes, your transaction is completed. So otherwise, you call the SMS server and we are waiting for the SMS server to respond after finishing it. So then you are your user is waiting and waiting and waiting for maybe minutes. Your user need to make sure that, okay, your transaction is done, critical things are done, database and everything is updated. Sending SMS is not the critical thing. So that you just send it to the message queue. So therefore, we can decouple functionalities. So there are situations that kind of decoupling is needed so that we can proceed with the major things and give feedback to the customer, and other things we can do it in the background. So that is where MDBs, so message driven beans, are super important. Okay. Like customer queries and so on. Okay. Right. So JMS, or the Java Message Service, is an API that provides the facility to send and read messages. Right. And it provides loosely coupled, reliable, asynchronous communication. Loosely coupled. The two applications are loosely coupled because your client does not directly call you. It sends the message to the queue. You take it from the queue. And it is asynchronous because your client doesn't directly call it. So client indirectly call, or the client send it to the message queue and you get it from the message queue. It's like email. Right? It's not like you take a telephone call. Okay. So in Java, you call it JMS, Java Message Service. So message driven beans are built using the JMS concept. Okay. So there are two types of messages when it comes to Java messaging. Point-to-point message, that is one point send the message to another point. Maybe your client send the message to only one message queue. Right. So then we have the pubs. Okay, let's take the one by one. So point-to-point message means one message is delivered to one receiver only, or one receiver's message queue, because we don't send it directly to the receiver. We send it to the message queue, but we are sending it to only one message queue. So then it is point to point. So then the other guy will use that message, consume that message. Okay. So second approach is, so the other possibility is publisher subscriber, pub sub messaging. So then one message is delivered to all the subscribers. Say you can subscribe to topics, or many clients can subscribe to topics, or client can subscribe to many topics as well. Say this client subscribe to topic 1 as well as topic 2, or maybe topic 3 also. And not only you, many clients are subscribed to a particular topic. Okay. So then when someone sends a message to the topic, everyone subscribed to that topic received that message. So it's something like one to many. It's effective, it is something like many to many. Okay. So it's something like you subscribe to a forum. So when someone write a reply, you also get an email. You can subscribe to many forums or many topics. Okay. You know that even in your university VLE, you can subscribe to topics. So that is called publisher subscriber messaging, because it is sort of a many. You can subscribe to many topics, and topic can send to many subscribers. When someone publish a message to the topic will send it, deliver it to many clients. And we use these concept with message-driven beans. It's type of enterprise Java bean. So MDB can asynchronously receive messages and process it. Okay. So it decouple. The session bean, some client directly call your session bean. But message-driven bean is not called by a client. Client send a message to the queue and you get it from the queue using JMS API, Java Messaging Service API. And MDBs are always stateless because it's even asynchronous also. Okay. Right. So your note has not referred to the technical details about message-driven beans. So there's something called on message. There's interface. It has only one method called on message and so on. But since your UCSC note hasn't referred to that, I just skip it because I don't want to give you too many details. Okay. But this is just, I gave you one code example only, just in case you want to get a feeling about it, because you never know, they might ask a simple question. So you have a method called on message. Okay. So you need to implement, you need to create a class which implements interface called message listener, which is a EJB interface. And that interface has only one method called on message, and it has a message as a parameter. So this is your data. So whatever the request come into the message queue or the message server is given, you are getting that data as a parameter, so that you can access that, get some details about it like text data and so on, and you can do the processing. So whenever there's a message come to the queue, you must have written this component and deployed in your application server. So whenever message comes to the queue, your server will call this method. It's like event handling. So when a message come to your message queue, you must have deployed this in your as a EJB. So then your application server will call this time to time. So every time message comes, this is call. Every time message comes, this is call. And here you are processing it. Okay. So that is how MDB, message driven beans work. So therefore make sure that you have annotation called message driven with map name, and make sure your class implements message listener interface, which has on message only. And then you package it to a jar file, EJB jar file, and deploy. That's it. So then when the client send it to the correct message queue, so this is your message queue name. So your application server will call you on message. Right. So that is the theoretical aspect of enterprise Java beans. The stateless session beans, stateful session beans, of course, the special stateless session bean type called singleton session beans, but we didn't discuss much about that. And message driven beans, and of course we did not discuss about the entity beans, because that is deprecated for Java persistence API. Okay. Right. So we'll take a break. After the break, we will do the practical session. Okay, so let's continue. Right, so let's do it as a practical session. Right, so I have my Eclipse running. Let me start the server. You can see there are no error messages. It is clean. Okay. Right. So now I want to create a application. I just follow the stuff in the practical manual that I have prepared for you guys. First, you need to create a project, but earlier we used to create web project. But this time you need to create an enterprise application project. Okay. Enterprise application project. And to that enterprise application project, that is EAR file. Remember, we can bundle your EJB jar files into an EAR file. Okay, so therefore, let's call this. So I already have a enterprise application project. So let's call this. Okay, file new enterprise application project. Okay, so I'll keep track of the names, otherwise I will forget those things. Because we want to add our EJB to this particular project. I'll call it my EAR. Okay, I'll call it my EAR. Okay. So the project name, this is the EAR project, enterprise application project, my EAR. Okay. So those things you don't have to do any change. Okay. So if you need to do any change, that will be mentioned in your note. Right. Make sure Wildfly 10, EAR version 7 or whatever compatible. So are correct. And just say finish. Okay. Just say finish. It is just create you a blank sort of a project. Okay. So we don't go and code there. So you can see there's something called my EAR. So it has nothing actually. It is sort of an umbrella project for my enterprise Java beans. Okay. So we don't go and code it, right? We don't do anything. So it's just a sort of a wrapper project EAR. Basically, it will build the EAR file. Okay. Right. So that is called my EAR. Okay. Right. You can give any name you want. Right. So now I want to create my EJB project. Right. EJB project. So there's an option called EJB project. Okay. New EJB project. And I will call it my EJB. Okay. I will call it my EJB, which I will include into my EAR. My EJB. Right. Let me create it. File, new EJB project. I'll call it my EJB. EJB module version 3.2. That is the default I get. I'm happy with that. 3.2 and default Wildfly server. And make sure you add that project to the EAR, enterprise application project. Okay. So the server is correct, Wildfly server. And make sure you tick that add project to EAR. So you can see all the EARs available. In my case, I have test EAR and my EAR. So test EAR is a project I created before the class just to double check whether the environment is working. So just we created the my EAR project. So we'll include our EJB project into my EAR project that we just created. Okay, so make sure you tick that add project to EAR and select the EAR project you created. So then this EJB jar file will be included into that EAR file and that EAR file will be deployed. Okay. Right. So that's it. You can say next. Then you give the name and the jar file. Okay. Right. So let's do it. Go to the next. Right here, you don't have to do anything. Okay. Right. So this is your client name, EJB module name, and this is your jar file name. Okay. So we'll call it my EJB client. and my EJB client jar. Okay, so that is the EJB client jar file. Okay, so that I don't want to do any change to that, but let me remember the name. Right. So then I can just say next. I don't have to do any change. And now I must have another, now I will say finish, okay? So this will create two projects. One is your EJB project, other one is your EJB client project. So EJB client project and the EJB project. EJB client project, we can use it to test your application. And this is just the umbrella project for EAR, okay? Right, so now when I finish, two more projects are added. One is, remember, this is my EAR file project. So then you have my EJB project, and then you have my EJB client project, three projects. So this is my previous created EAR project, which we don't do anything other than just let it use for the packaging. But this has created my EJB project and my EJB client project. So this is my client for testing, and this is where I will write my EJB code. Okay. So if anything is not clear, you need to ask. Okay. Right. So we will create a web project also, because we want to call our EJB from the web. So that is how usually we do it, right? So your web application, rather than implementing business logic, you call the EJBs. And EJB has the business logic can call in the databases and so on. Right, so you know how to create a dynamic web project. So just make sure that you add that web project also to the EAR. So then your EAR will have the EJB jar files as well as the WAR file. Okay, so that is the idea. Okay, so right, so let's create that, and I will call it my web. Okay, so my EAR, my EJB, my web, and of course my EJB client for the client. Okay, so all simple I'm using. Right, file, new dynamic web project. That is something we have already done when we do the JSP servlet. I'll call it my web. Okay, so these are just default values, and make sure add project to EAR and select my EAR, right? My EAR, that is important. Otherwise, you are not including it to the EAR file. Then I'll say next. I don't need to do any change here. If you want to, can use the generate web XML, but anyway, we'll be using annotations. But anyway, I'll always use future purpose. Let it generate the web XML, or at any time you can add the web XML by yourself. And I will say finish. So now I have another project called my web. So my EAR, my EJB, my EJB client, my web, and all these are included in the my EAR. Okay, my EAR has all these things. Okay, you can see my web WAR file is there, my EJB jar file is there, EJB jar is there, my EJB jar is there, my web WAR is there. So your EAR has the EJB jar file and this dynamic web components WAR file. Okay, so you must know what is happening, right? You must know what is happening inside. Otherwise, this will be just a mystery. Right. So first we will create a small JSP file and see whether our EAR file is properly deployed. Still, we are not developing any EJBs, right? So because so far what we did was create a dynamic web application and create a WAR file and deploy it. So this is the first time we have included our WAR file into the EAR file. So therefore, let's see whether our overall application is properly deployed by adding a JSP file and deploy it and see whether we can access the JSP file. Now the JSP file is inside your EAR file. Okay, it's a very simple thing. Right, so go to your dynamic web application and go to the web content. So this is something we have already done. And right click and say new JSP file. So we did JSP last week, and I'll just call it index, or I'll call it hello.jsp. Hello. Right. So I don't want to write any JSP because this is not JSP session, but I just want to write a simple H1 and see whether it's properly deployed. Right. Hello from my web. Okay, my web is from my EAR. Okay, just to double check. Right. So anyway, I will close all the other code because there are so many classes open from my previous projects. Right. So now what I want to do is I want to add or deploy that EAR, which of course implicitly deploy the EJB, and of course EJB still we have not implemented, but there will be a EJB jar file, at even a blank jar file, and var file containing this only this JSP file and the web XML. Okay. So how to do that? Go and say right click and say add and remove. And now you can see there's something called my EAR. So that my EAR has my EJB, my web, and my EJB client, 2 jar files and var file. Just add it. Make sure nothing else is there so that we don't want to get into conflict, and say finish and see whether there are errors in the console. So no errors in my console, but it says it has deployed my EAR, and by as part of that it has deployed my web var and my EJB var. So when it deploys my EAR file, it has included my web var and my EJB var. So that JSP file is inside my web. Okay. So the web context is /my web because context is for the web. Okay. Right. So now I can test, of course, local loss, blah, blah, blah. But if you are lazy, you can just right click and say run. Run as run on server. Then we can copy that and use in our web browser as well. Right. So just be patient. It will take few seconds. Right, you can see hello from my web. So that means still I have not developed any EJBs or nothing, but just now I know that my enterprise application structure is properly working. Okay, so I can access it from my browser as well. Right, localhost, in my case 8080/myweb/hello.jsp. Okay, and I just copied it from here. Right, so now I'm ready to start developing my EJB and maybe call it from client as well as the JSP. Okay. Right, so this is testing whether the application is running. Right, so now we create our EJB. So let's create a session, stateless session B, because that is the easiest to do. Okay. So go to your EJB project, right click and say new. You have session bean is there. Session bean EJB 3.x. Okay. So make sure you are in the EJB project. Okay, EJB project. In our case, my EJB. Make sure you create a session bean. Okay, session B. So go to the my EJB project, new session bean. Okay, so you have the message driven bean, session bean. So what we need is message session bean EJB3. Okay, right. So let's give it a name. Okay, we'll call it hello bean under Aurora CS. Okay, and make sure you select stateless as the state type. Aurora CS. So I just try to give you the simplest possible example. Okay, say hello bean, H capital B capital. I just use H capital B capital. Okay, and type is stateless. By default, it is stateless. You have stateless, stateful, singleton. The three options. So make sure you use stateless here. Okay, stateless. So then make sure you tick on the remote and it will give you a by default class name and no interface view. Okay, remote and no interface view. So remote tick, no interface view tick, and it has given us a name. Okay, so let's call this Aurora CS. Right, so the remote class name is, sorry, remote interface name is Aurora CS hello bean remote. So just I gave this name Aurora CS hello bean. So it has take the interface name as hello bean remote. And you can say next. You don't have to do any change here. Right? You don't have to do any change here. Maybe you can give a map name. So just give your bean a name. Say stateless session bean a name. You can give the same name like your class name. And just make sure you tick these two options and then just say next. And it will generate you the code. Okay, finish. It will generate you the code structure in your EJB project. So that is under EJB module, you have Aurora CS package and hello bean. Okay, hello bean. So you can see that it's a class name is hello bean, implements the hello bean remote interface. So that remote interface is generated in your my EJB client. Go to EJB module and Aurora CS, you have the interface. So interface is generated in your client project, and your class, your stateless session bean class has implemented the hello bean remote. Let's open the hello bean remote. It's simply the annotation remote is there, and it is just the interface, and it has no method because we need to write the methods. Right? We need to write the method and we need to implement it in. So we need to write the methods here and then implement here. Okay. Right. So let me delete these unnecessary comments. And it has just the constructor, nothing else. Okay, nothing else. And it's a stateless. You can see the mappings, annotation stateless, map to name called hello bean, and it's a local bean as well. Okay, so don't worry. So about that, because we want to call it locally, not as a remotely. Okay. Right. So now we are done with the structure. Now we want to add a method to the interface and implement it here, then deploy it, and then call it. That's it. Okay. Right. So let's add a method to the interface. I will use the because I just want to implement the simplest possible hello world type application. A public string say hello. Okay. So you need to add it to the remote interface. Okay. Public, make sure it is public, return a string, say hello, or maybe add two numbers or whatever. Okay, right, it's the interface. So now you need to implement this in your hello bean. Okay, because otherwise you get errors also, because you are supposed to implement all the methods there. You can just return, say hello from hello bean. It's just simple thing. Or maybe you can do some calculation and so on. You can send parameter, use parameters, or maybe you can take two numbers and give the result. So that is something you can implement as exercise. Okay. Right. So now I have implemented, my session bean has implemented the method called say hello, which is in my remote interface, and now I have implemented it. Okay. So I have implemented it, and it's a stateless local bean. Okay. Right. So now I can deploy it, and then later we can call it from a servlet. First deploy it. Do code a little bit of things and finish it. Otherwise, you do a lot of things and then you deploy it. Sometimes you don't know from where you are getting errors, whether it's error in the EJB, whether in the servlet. So therefore, do a little bit of things and deploy it and maybe possibly test that thing. Okay, so now we did some coding. So therefore, what I will do is I will say, again, add remove, because when you're working with EJB, better to do the remove and add it again. Remove it and make sure you have saved everything, right? So you can say I have not saved this class. Save. Right, these are okay. Now I will add it again. So always keep looking at your server console and see whether there are errors when you add remove and when you restart service. Okay, so I'll say add remove. I'll again add the EAR, my EAR, because it has the EJB jars and WAR files. Finish and see are there any errors in the console. Now I have EJB. Okay, so it says okay, so this is not error. This is information, because remember now we have a enterprise stateless session bean called hello bean. So it just gives you some information about the deployed hello bean. Right, so this is not error. It says bind JNDI bindings for session bean name hello bean in development unit. Okay, called myejb.jar of the deployment myEAR. It gives you all the information as follows. The details are as follows, and this is your JNDI name. So remember, you need to look up the JNDI. When someone call your EJB, now your EJB is bound to a Java naming and directory interface. So you need to look up and then call it. Okay. So this is what you are supposed to use. Hello bean, com Aurora CS hello bean. Okay. Right. So all these details are available here. Okay. Which we will be using in our servlet to call this hello bean class. Okay. Hello bean class. Right. So that means I have successfully deployed my EJB also. Hello EJB, stateless session bean. Okay. Stateless session bean. Right. So now we'll create a servlet, and from servlet, I will map the servlet to URL, and then I will call the EJB from the servlet. That is the simplest I can do. Right? I wanted to give you the simplest possible EJB practical. Okay. So you can go to the web and create a servlet, like hello bean servlet or something, because our Java bean is hello bean. Okay. So remember, our Java bean is hello bean. So therefore, let's call our servlet as hello bean servlet. So that things are very simple. So of course, you can give it any name. Right. So let's create a servlet and let's map it to something like hello or something. Right. Go to the web project, web content. Sorry, go to the Java resources, SRC, and right click and say new servlet. Servlet is not there. Why is that? Okay, go to the, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. No. Java resources, new. Yeah, you have the servlet. Java resources, servlet. And I will call this Java package as com Aurora CS, and the class name as Hello Bean Servlet. And I extend from HTTP servlet because then I can override the do get or do post. Okay. Right. So then I'll say next. So I will map it to something called Hello Bean. Or let's call it, yeah, let's call it hello. Okay. Let's call it hello. All simple. Okay. Simple. So my context is hello. Okay. So you need to remember all those things. And I'll say next. Okay. Generate the do get. I don't need the do post. Okay. Or maybe just let it generate both. Finish. I'll delete the comments, unnecessary comments. I don't need the constructor or the serial version ID. And remember, it has extended from HTTP servlet, and it has generated me the dummy implementation for do get and do post. Okay, do get and do post. Right. So now we can use our servlet. You need to look up from the JNDI and get the bean and call that say hello method. Okay, say hello method. Right. So I'll copy paste the code because I don't want to type this time consuming. Right. I just need the do get. So therefore I will even delete the do post method also because I just want to keep things simple. I will delete this line and I will paste this. So there's a missing part here that I will copy paste again. From Aurora CS hello bean remote. Right. Right. So then I need to import this initial context class that I can get it done using Eclipse. It should be Java Java naming package. Okay, Java naming package. Then hello bean remote. Is it hello bean remote our interface? Yes, hello bean remote is our interface. So that you can import. No, I don't need to create a class because it must be, yeah, so it must be included in my EJ. Now you can see that hello bean remote is in my client project. So this is my web. So my web project has no idea about the client because in the client project we have the my bean remote interface. Okay, so therefore we need to connect that. Okay, so let me check how to do that. Yeah, so this is what you do. Right click the web project, properties, deployment assembly, add project and your EJB client. So you need to do that. So that is why still you are getting this error message because your dynamic web project, my web project has no idea about your client because you need the EJB client if you want to communicate with the EJB component. So in order to communicate with the EJB component, you just need the EJB client. So basically, you need the EJB client jar, but this is your development environment. There you need the EJB client project, but in the deployment, all these are in the same EAR file. Okay. So therefore, what you need to do is, so this is the step you need to do. Right click on the web project because that is where you need that client project. Properties, deployment assembly. Okay. Properties. Go to deployment assembly. It's a deployment assembly. And you can do add. Okay, go to add. project and select your Bean client project. Add project. Next, and you can see all the projects. Make sure you add the My EJB client project, not the My EJB project, My EJB client project. Okay, and say finish, and say apply, and okay. Now that error must be vanished. You can see no longer that error is there, because now it knows what is Hello Bean remote is. Okay, and again there are no errors. Okay, so that means your web project is aware of that EJB client project, or the at runtime it is aware of the EJB client Java. Okay, so that it knows there's a class called hello method being remote. But make sure now remember, now this is your servlet class, is doGet method. So you need to look up and get that EJB or stateless session B EJB. So in order to do that, you need to use the correct naming. So this is you can see global my EAR, my EJB, okay, hello bean. So then exclamation mark com Aurora CS hello bean. Okay, so just copy this. I copy this because our names are different. Okay, so then you paste it here from your code. Okay, from your code, because your code is referring to different project name. Right, so now it is Java. So basically it is this one. Okay. Java, that is our JNDI name for the deployed EJB. Java global my EAR, my EJB, hello bean, exclamation, com Aurora CS, hello bean. Okay, otherwise you will get a naming exception. Right, so then of course you need to import the print writer, Java IO print writer, and of course when you call this lookup method, make sure you put it into a try catch block, because this throws a checked exception called naming exception. So make sure you import that also. It's again from Java naming package. Right. So if you want, you can just say source refactor. So that make you, sorry, source format, make it nice. Right. So now what we do, we get that initial context for JNDI, then do the JNDI lookup for the hello bean and get an instance of hello bean object. So then we call the say hello method, because say hello method is available in the hello bean. Right, hello bean remote, we have casted it and it has to say hello. So then we get the response from the Java enterprise Java bean stateless session bean. So that result we just print to our servlet output, so that we can see whether we get the response from the stateless session bean. So what should be this response? In our case, the response must be hello from hello bean. Okay, hello from hello bean. So make sure you save it. Now we are done. We just need to redeploy this. Maybe just restarting the server will do, or else just remove and add, or do both. I'll check whether the restarting will do the trick for us. And keep looking for errors, okay? Because don't let errors to accumulate, then you don't know where the error is. Right, no error. Right, no error at all. Server has started. Okay, so this is your EJB binding. Right, so now I can run my servlet, which is mapped to hello. Okay, which is mapped to hello. My web/hello. Right, so अब केलिमा run करो. And it called the EJB. Not hello JSP, just hello. Oh, there's error. What is that? Right. Java lang class cast exception com Aurora CS hello bean cannot cast to com Aurora CS hello bean remote. And let's check whether there are any spelling mistakes or something like that. Okay, hello bean BEAN remote. Right, so let's again double check.
So,
Yes. Any clue?
when creating the dynamic, yeah, I'm not very sure.
Okay.
When creating the dynamic web project,
Yes.
we have to tick add project to an EAR, right?
We didn't do that.
I'm not sure if you did because I got disconnected right at that moment. So
I think I
could
did.
be the reason.
Okay, I will double check. I think I did it. Let's say whether web module is there. Yeah, my web module is there. Okay. So EAR has it because I can double check that from the server also. My EAR has my web, right? My web is there, and my web has the my web, EJB client as well. So that is not an issue because I tick it. I tick it. So that is not an issue. Maybe some other naming issue is there. Okay, so let me double check again. This must be hello bean remote, right? So you can see. So this must be hello bean remote. So that is the issue. So my class name must be hello bean remote, right? So in the JMDI, why it is not called hello bean remote? Yeah, I think we not, this is the name. So we must use the word hello bean remote. That is the issue. Right? That should be the issue. Okay. Not hello bean. We must look up for this one, hello bean remote, not the hello bean. I just copy the first line, right? But it should be something like this. Hello bean remote. I think this should resolve the issue. Okay. Right. So let me save it. This is the correct one I am now using because I'm supposed to do that change to my web. Hello bean. Right. Hello bean. Right. So let me restart the server and see whether now hopefully it should fix the issue. Okay. Because I use hello bean, but it looks like you need the hello bean remote. That is our interface. Right. So no error. Now let's access. Hopefully that it should work now. That it says hello from hello bean, right? So no error now. So basically what happens, you call the my web slash hello, which is mapped to the, that path is mapped to the hello bean servlet. And we just call the do get because we just send the URL. And when the do get is called, it look up the from JNDI, this particular JNDI name, which is bound to by our hello bean EJB, right? And it look up and then get that hello bean remote object. Then from that object, it just like a normal call, local call, it called the say hello. Once you get it, it's right. Once you get it from the JNDI, for you, it is just like a normal method call, right? So that is how what is meant by the complexity of remote call is handled by the container. So once you do that, it's just like you are calling another method in or the object in the same JVM. So we call the say hello and we just print it to the response so that we get it into the server. Okay. Right. So that is how we work with a stateless session bean. So now if you want, you can just add another method here, like add or something. Say public, maybe 2 integers and give you the response. Say int, say add, maybe 2 parameters also. Say int x comma int y. And now you need to implement this. Make sure you save it, okay? In the hello bean. Now you can see it's red because it has one more method in the interface. So we will simply return x plus y. Okay, x plus y. Right. So you can see that once you set up your environment, development is super easy. So there's an initial learning curve to familiar with how to set up your project, what is happening, your EJB JI is connected to EAR, your Y is connected to EAR. So once you understand, it's okay. It is very simple thing. So then you concentrate on your software development. You don't worry too much about the EJBs and so on. That is something you learn once. Right. So now I'm done. Now from the servlet, let's call this one also, right? Say int, say sum equal, because we got the remote bean. You can create another bean and play around. Okay. Say add. I'll send 15 and 25. So that I must get 40. And I will print that also. I'll print that also sum. But before that, I'll print BR. So that it goes to the next line. Right. Right. So now I will restart the server. Hopefully it will sync everything, or else I will remove and add the same method. Okay. I didn't add a new EJB. I just add another method for the EJB. So make sure you be patient and be a critical thinker, logical thinker, and of course, you need to have that experience, go through that කට්ට කාලා හිර වෙලා ඒකයි ගොඩක් තනියෙන් කරන්න අමාරු මේවා. You need the help. In software development, of course, you have a team with senior people. Right. We are going to say hello from Hello Bean, and we got 40 because we just sent 15 and 25. So this is stateless session bean. Okay. So I can call it from another browser or another machine. Of course, if you have mapped it to a IP address, each one is separate. Okay. Stateless. There's no conventional status. Okay. This is not stateful. Just response and forget. Right. So that is how you create a stateless session bean, EJB, in a practical level. Okay. Right. So now I will create a stateful session bean also, because we are not interested in message driven beans, and obviously we are not interested in entity beans because it's deprecated. Okay. For that, I will create a session, same project, but this time I will create a session bean which is stateful, right? I will call it shopping cart bean. Shopping cart bean. Go to the EJB project. Right. My EJB, and say new session bean. I'll call it shopping cart bean. Sorry, that is package. Home.Aurora CS. Okay, shopping cart bean. Okay. Let me have that name also. So I have the hello bean as well as shopping cart bean now. Earlier we had hello bean. Okay. Right, I will say next. I'll ask you to generate remote. Okay. remote and no interface view, and make sure it is stateful. That is super important. Not stateless. By default, stateless. Select stateful. Okay, select stateful. So then you can say next. You don't have to do anything here. You don't have to do, just make sure these are ticked, and maybe you can give a map name. Yeah, we can give it a map name, same name, and say finish. And now you have another, to the client, you can see there's another interface, shopping cart being remote, and your EJB project, my EJB project, there's another class called shopping cart being, but this time it is stateful. So this one is stateless. It uses stateless annotation and local bean, but this one use stateful annotation and local bean, and its map name is shopping cart bean. Right. So now you need to add the methods to the interface and implement here. Okay. Only thing is this, keep track of your session in the application server, not in the web server. Okay. Right. So we will be adding few methods here to the interface to maintain a shopping cart. Okay. And then we'll implement those things and then deploy and call it from the servlet. Okay. Right. So I go for the shopping cart in remote and add these to the interface. The basic methods for minimum shopping cart application. Of course, array list is Java util array list. Right. So those are my methods, and I have instance variable. I have a instance variable as well. Then I have 4 methods: clear cart, remove product, place product, and list cart items. Okay, so these things I have to implement in the bean. Okay, now of course this one is giving me errors because I have not implemented the methods. Right. I'll straight away copy paste the implementation because I don't want to take time. Okay. And this is very simple implementation. Okay. Just we are keeping it in the array. Okay, array list. I don't need the construct as well. Again, I need to import array list. I will just format it. Source format. Right. So we are keeping our array list shopping cart items in array list of strings. So then when you add product, place product, we are adding to the array list. When you remove product, we are removing that name from the array list. Okay, so we have not implemented the clear cart. And this is just the constructor that create this array list object. Okay, or you can just create it here itself. Clear cart, basically you need to remove all the items from the cart. Okay, so that you can implement using iteration. Or I don't know whether there's a method to remove all the items. Or do we have a method to remove all the items? Maybe we can implement that also. Cart dot. Do we have something called remove all or something? Yeah, maybe remove all. But it need a collection, right? Okay, just do a small search and find out how to remove all the element from array list. Okay. So let's do a Google search right now. remove all elements from Java array list. Because we don't remember everything, right? It has a clear method, right? If you need this operation, use the array list clear method. Let's see code example. Yeah, clear method, right? Okay, let's use the clear method. Card dot clear. Right. So that is also implemented. Okay. Right. So now you need to call it. But for the time being, we can deploy and see whether there are any errors. Obviously, there should not be any errors because this is just a simple implementation. So therefore, I will write the client code or the calling code as well and then straight away deploy it because I'm pretty sure this should not give me any errors. This is simple code. Right. So now we need to write our web client. So to make it very simple, I have make all the code into one JSP and remove, clear everything in one JSP. Usually we need different JSPs, but we just put everything into one JSP. So let's call this shopping cart JSP. Go to your web project, new JSP, shopping cart. I will use all simple shopping cart JSP. Remember, in the JSP, you can do whatever you can do with servlets. I will copy paste the code because it will take time. So they don't ask coding like this, right? So they just check whether you know what you are doing. Basically, to check your confidence, okay? And we did 2 past paper questions also last time. You remember, those are very theory questions. But you need that confidence to do it. Okay, so let's reformat it. So this one I want to make it right this time. Shopping cart remote. So when I deploy only we get it. Still we have not deployed it. Okay, we have not deployed it. But I know it must be something like this, but shopping cart remote. Okay. So this must be shopping cart remote. Okay. Shopping cart remote. And I need to do some imports, right? Shopping cart being remote. Yeah, shopping cart being remote. Okay. Being remote. Right. So we need to do some imports. Right. You need to do some imports here. Right. These 3 imports. Okay. We can do it at the top. Those errors must vanish. Right. No errors now. And let me see whether I can format it. Source format. It doesn't format. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. Right, so now I will restart the server. And another EJB must be registered in the console now. A shopping cart bean. Yes, save. And check for the error messages. Now there must be two JNDI naming. One for the hello bean, other one for the shopping cart bean. That is for the hello bean. Right, so this is for the shopping cart bean. You can see. So this is the second one we created. The state full session bean. Now I can double check my name again because last time we really messed it. Global, my EAR, my EJB. Sorry, this is not hello bean. So this must also be shopping cart bean. So you can see shopping cart bean. Aurora CS. Shopping cart bean remote. Yes, correct, right? Shopping cart bean remote. Right. So we just in a scriptlet, even this is a scriptlet where you can write just like a servlet, anything. You get the initial context and cast it to a shopping cart bean. Then we are setting it to this. We create a session attribute as well. The other functionalities you can understand by yourself because we did the JSP and servlet, right? So first I will run it and then I will explain a little bit more. Okay. Right. So this is my shopping cart. JSP is the JSP. Right. So I will rename. I will copy the path. Same web path. Now this one is my web / shopping cart JSP. Okay. It gives me error. Shopping cart JSP. Possibly because it's a JSP, I need to re-add it. Usually restarting doesn't work. I will add and remove. Remove all. Sorry. Remove all. Then I will add it. Because usually JSP's restarting doesn't work. Right. My EAR. Finish. Usually EJBs are deployed, sync, but it looks like the JSPs are not synchronized. Unless you re-add it. Hello bean එක මේක නෑනේ shopping cart එක කොහෙන්ද hello bean එක. Maybe that is there. Hello bean එක කොහෙන්ද ආවේ? Shopping cart bean remote. This should be shopping cart bean remote. නෑනේ shopping cart bean. Shopping cart bean remote. Correct, right? කද්දේනේ රේක. Right, let's read the error message. Exception handling request. Java servlet exception. Name not found exception. Okay. Name not found exception. I can හදාගන්න ලේසි ඕක. My EAR. My EJB. මෙතන තියෙන hello bean තාම දැක්කද? hello bean නැත් තියෙන්නේ බෑනේ. I think අපි කරපු change එක තාම ගිහිල්ලා නැහැ. Right? So we'll restart the server. Or we'll add remove. අපි කරපු change එක තාම ගිහිල්ලා නැහැ. හරි. ඒක hello bean නැන්නේ තියෙන්නේ. Okay, right. So server has started. Hopefully now things should work. Right. So we get the basic page because it is cluttered with a lot of things because of all the functionality added to the same thing. So I just add it is, but of course, but when I say add, it is just adding a string, not a real item, right? It just add a string, okay? And just to make it simple, so I will say something like rinso, add to cart, uh, shopping cart JSP, shopping cart JSP. Okay. I can weave it because not everything is. Now let's see the list item. Why is that shopping cart JSP? Shopping, simple capital issue. Okay. Because I make everything simple. So therefore, let me fix that issue. So this must be all simple. Remember, URLs are case sensitive. Right. So now it should work. So those are the hyperlinks. Okay. Let me edit because I did a change to the JSP. My EAR. Right. So now without restarting, hopefully it will work. Right. So now let's add it again. Add to cart. You can see Rinso added to the cart. Let's add another one. Say sunlight. Sunlight added to the cart. Now if I list item, Rinso and sunlight is there. Okay. So remove item, I will remove Rinso. I think it is case sensitive. Rinso. Remove from item, remove from cart. Rinso removed. Now if I list, sunlight is only there. I'll add astra. And list. Okay. Now this is session bean. So this is for this particular browser. If I use another browser, it has a different session. Okay. So now if I say list item, nothing is there. For this, I will add something like, say, Melbourne, or let's say Mari. Maybe another one. Something like tippy tip. And if I list item, so blank එක දැඩිලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි එයාට මාරි ටිපි ටිප්. හරි? මෙයා රිෆ්‍රෙෂ් කරා කියලා එයාට ඒක බලපාන්නේ නැහැ. මෙයා තාම sunlight and so this guy it is sunlight and list item. So you can see so different browsers, different machines are maintaining different sessions. Your task is not to understand how this add remove is implemented. Of course, this is super simple to understand. අර අදාළ Java bean method එක call කරනවා මෙයා සැරින් සැරේ. හරි? මොකද Java bean එකේ තියෙන methods ටික implement කරලා clear, remove, place, sort and so on. So from our JSP, we just call the correct EJB method. Okay, EJB method. So that is our task. So we are calling the JSP. ඒකට තමන්ටම තමයි submit කරගන්නේ. ඒ parameter අරගෙන parameter එකට තියෙන method name එක method name එකත් එක්ක call කරනවා. හරි? Remove product. place product, and so on. Okay. Remove all. අදාළ method ටික අපි call කරනවා. Okay. Right. So that's it about our practical session. So don't memorize code. So your task is get a feeling about how enterprise Java Beans application development is done. So you create a EAR file. To EAR file, you add a EJB file. And if you want, you can even include your web WAR file, dynamic web file. So then make sure that to the WAR file, you include the EJB client project. So then you write your remote methods, remote interfaces, and implement as stateless session beans, stateful session beans, and so on. I did not cover the message-driven bean as a practical thing because that is not seriously mentioned in your note. So now your task is again go through the UCSC note. So you have the UCSC note also. So let me open the UCSC note. All the UCSC notes you need to go through. Obviously, that is not something I want to mention, right? Topic 5. Yeah. Right. So go through this. Now you should be able to read it without any issue. What is Java Beans, right? What are the proper features EJB servers provide you to the Java Beans? Advantages of Java Beans, the Java Beans EJB architecture, the types of Java Beans, session, stateful, stateless, singleton, message-driven beans, entity beans which are deprecated now. So then they also go through some practically how to create a class and so on, right? Athariන් theoretically right? EJB ජායක මේ කොහොමද EAR එකට connect වෙන්නේ? හරි. How do you do that initial naming context, JNDI lookup, right? Directory structures, and some important annotations. Right, so we stop at this point. So in our Sunday class, we will have a 2 session again, morning and afternoon. So maybe morning session, we will do past papers on project management, agile, and so on. And of course, now we have to do some past papers on network because network subject is also done. And afternoon session, most probably we will take another enterprise application topic like WebSocket or something like that. Okay, so we want to finish this subject while doing the past papers for other subjects. And we stop at this point, right? And if you have any question, any doubt, you can ask at any time. Use your WhatsApp group or just send me a message, or you can just call me if you have any issues with the environment and so on. Okay, right? We stop at this point. Thank you.